here for a particular item on the agenda? Mr. Thomas Flintstones has built the monument to to honor the Tlikwaynung culture down by the Chinese cemetery. And more recently, he contributed the Cairn overlooking Trial Islands, Tlikwaynung. And since it was a donation, I had a couple of photographs framed, and it's the sort of thing he can hang in his office as a thank you for well-paying. He saved us a few $1,000s that we didn't have.
All rise.
Thank you very much. Welcome everybody to our regular meeting of council for the 27th of November 2019. As we do in all of our meetings, we acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is the traditional territories of the coast and Straits Salish peoples. Specifically, we recognize the Tlikwaynung speaking people who are today known as the Songhees and the Esquimalt, and that their historic connections continue to this day. I also wish to advise people, as we do at every meeting, that this is video streamed live and also recorded for posterity and archived online. So we are now call the meeting to order. We have an amended agenda before us, and we can go right, Mr. Jones, right into the minutes and the reports, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you very much. We were in closed session prior to this part of the meeting, as you can see from the actual agenda. So we start with the council meetings of minutes of the 14th of November, and there's been an addenda. They weren't, I think, initially attached. They are now. So could I have a motion to approve?
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Any changes, deletions? Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Committee of the Whole for November the 20th, please, for approval. Moved.
Seconded.
Moved and seconded. Discussions, changes, comments? All right. Call the question. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Special council meeting on November 14th, 2017. Again, we have them attached now. Motion to approve, please.
Move approval.
Moved. Seconded. Changes, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. I have three brief comments and remarks before I present this wonderful picture that you see over there. And three things. First, I want to recognize and thank all of those who helped put Light Up together. And there was a long list of people who helped out. It's put together by the Business Improvement Association. We thank them. We thank the choir that backed up Barrister Bill Murphy Dyson with his song and dance routine, which we've become used to and love. Almost getting the 12 Days of Christmas thing down after listening to him for 20 years. Wonderful entertainment, and the group that backed him up, we thank them. We also recognize and thank the fire department and the police department for ushering in our Santa, the Santa. I shouldn't say it's our Santa. He goes all over. We know that. So we want to thank our protective services for helping out there and making sure we were all safe. And we thank Santa and all the boys and girls, young and old, who attended to welcome him. It was a wonderful evening. It was a bit moist at times, and I was, it's part of my role is with the head of the Business Improvement Association. We plug in this very heavy-duty line, and it was very nerve-wracking as to whether or not I would be grounded through that water, but I survived. So thanks to everybody, and thanks for everybody coming out and making it such a special occasion. A reminder, number 2, a reminder that there's more Christmas events that portends the end of December, and that is this Friday, starting at the Royal Victoria Yacht Club. We have the Sea of Lights, where decorated boats in many shapes and sizes make their way from the yacht club to Willows Beach, expected to arrive there about 7 o'clock. There's generally a bonfire that is put on. There's some goodies, and the firefighters there put on a great show for people who come down to watch the lights. I have the honor of being on one of the boats, generally a warm one, to be a judge of the best boats. So I welcome everybody to come out, and I thank the Royal Victoria Yacht Club and the past Commodore Andrew McBride, who is the Sea of Lights coordinator for that. So, and thirdly and lastly, you may have seen some Maclean's article and StatsCan issuing crime statistics from across Canada. They surveyed 229 communities as to their level of violent crime and the level of crime severity. And the indexes are a little bit different. Violent crime kind of speaks for itself. And in violent crime, there are 229 communities. We were the second safest. We were 228. Only Middlesex, a town apparently in Ontario, also called Thames Centre, was slightly safer than us. So we're grateful that we live in such a wonderful community, and we're grateful to the police who are here tonight for their budget for keeping us all safe. And the other index, we didn't score quite as well, but we were pretty close to one of the best, and it's called the Crime Severity Index, where they take in not just violent crimes, but they look at other crimes, break-and-enters, any thefts, and they score them in accordance to their seriousness. So obviously a break-and-enter would score higher than a theft from a car. But they're all put into this basket, and out of the 229, we were 212. And it's one of those things, we don't want to be number one. You want to be 229, in which case this 229 was Kennebecasis in New Brunswick. But we were just ahead of Amherst at 212. So again, it's something that we're grateful for, that we live in the kind of community that we do. So those are my remarks. Now, we are joined here today by Mr. Mike DePalma. There's Mr. DePalma. Thank you very much. And I'm going to come around, Mr. DePalma, and I'm just going to use this microphone here because there's no microphone over there. And this is to recognize and thank you and the Flintstones masonry. You may have seen this beautiful cairn up on the lookout at the top of King George, stone cairn, which celebrates our heritage. and in particular celebrates our heritage lighthouse out on Trial Island, which recently was given special designation. These Trial Islands, also known as Tlikwaynung, under the First Nations name, were now recognized by this beautiful cairn. And so thanks to Mr. De Palma, his very generous contribution to this great cairn, which overlooks this area. So we acknowledge your contribution with great thanks. And tonight we have a special presentation for you, which I'll get up and make in a minute. And I know you have, your company has been involved before in the Tlikwaynung history cairns and monuments. There's a sacred Sima rock by the Chinese cemetery. Again, it's a great addition to our community, and it really speaks to what we're trying to do in terms of recognizing First Nations and building the bridges and engage in reconciliation. So I'm going to read out the inscription. There's a plaque on this beautiful framed work of art. It says, "With gratitude to Mike De Palma of Flintstones Masonry for his contribution of the stone cairn celebrating our heritage lighthouse on Trial Islands, Tlikwaynung, the District of Oak Bay, 2017. So thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say too that I live in Oak Bay. I've been living here for the last 12 to 13 years. My wife grew up in Oak Bay, and we do a lot of work in Oak Bay. And I plan on living here for a long time, and I actually live just around the corner from a couple of the cairns we built. I take my nieces for walks when I walk my dog, and I show her the cairns. And so I feel really lucky and privileged to be living here, and it's such a great community. And I picture myself living here for a long, long time. So thank you very much.
With those kind of views, you wouldn't want to move away.
Yeah, exactly. No, very blessed.
No, it's okay.
Okay, so.
Takes us a while to get a good one with the mayor.
Ouch! I wish I would have said that.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and we'll have tweeting on this, probably.
Sure.
By the time I return to my seat, it'll be tweeted to millions of people around the world.
Oh, isn't it? Jeez. I think all this is awesome. But, yeah, like I said, very grateful to be living here, and I'd be happy to help out with anything else down the road. So.
Oh, we know where you live.
Yep. Yeah.
He said it in public.
Thank you.
Haisha. I see Mr. Jones, after that comment, has left the chambers. When he returns, I'll mention how we've extended his probation with new conditions. And we can actually impose them. I think we have a judge present right now who can make you sign the order, sir. Thank you very much. We next have on our agenda the public participation period. This is a time of 20 minutes we set aside at the beginning of our meeting, and we ask people to step forward should they wish to address us on any topic connected to Oak Bay. When you do so, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name, the municipality where you reside, and the topic. When you hear the words "welcome" by me, I will start a 3-minute clock. We would ask you also at some point, either before or after, to just print your name and the municipality so we have a written record of it. And particularly if you have an unusual spelling of your name, that it's good to have there. So please come forward, the first speaker. I ask again. Yep. Even though we may know your name, Mr. Hobson, you still have to repeat it, because a lot of people who are watching at home may not know your name.
Okay. All right, let me get this a little closer here. My name's Curtis Hobson. I'm a resident of Oak Bay. Hello, Council.
Welcome.
Oh, sorry. Hello, Council. There's an issue I would like to talk about, and that issue is the processes our municipality uses to approve development. Regardless of the length of time it took for the quest to get to the decision stage, I feel the process is flawed. Members of the public and the council both highlighted the problem at the Committee of the Whole last week. No one seems to want to or will get involved until there is a proposal, and by that time, there has been a large investment in time, resources, money, and stress from all parties and on all parties. I and many others in our municipality think that it would be much better if council, staff, developers, neighbors, and all members of the community could have informed and valuable input at the front end of the process so that the high-stakes decision process, like we saw with the Quest, is not the way things play out. My heart just broke when the citizen with the degenerative nerve disease noted that she moved into her home hoping to spend her remaining good years in a home, community, and neighborhood that would work for her. Instead, she has been stressed for a number of years dealing with the process. The current process is just so fraught with issues that it becomes somewhat disheartening to many citizens. Essentially, we are told that this high-stakes process is the process we have to deal with. I ask council, is this really the best that you can do? You are our elected officials. You set the tone, you make the rules, you make the decisions. The citizenry look up to you for leadership, not as a source of stress. If developers had some inkling of what would be acceptable to the municipality and citizenry, if a series of simple and inexpensive sketches laying out massing, density, height, design, look, etc., was run by all concerned, the developer could take the feedback and then focus their efforts to come back with something that has consensus, social license, and then the developer would know that what they are proposing has a very likely chance of passing. As it is now, everyone has to deal with the unknown. What will be proposed? How will council react? How will it fit in with all aspects of the OCP, etc.? As Councillor Murdoch pointed out, it seems our current OCB has the ability to be all things to all people. Aside from a 20-story high-rise, I think a creative type could put forward almost anything that is, quote, is not inconsistent with the OCP. Without a housing strategy, updated bylaws, zoning, and rules, I fear that uncertainty and the resultant effect this has on our community will continue to divide us when we should be working together to make Oak Bay even better than it is. I feel that this particular process is so broken and adversarial high stakes that there always seems to be a winner and a loser. The Quest lost and those against the development won. I don't think that is how citizens want to feel about their community. I think the citizenry wants to feel involved and have input. They want to be creative. They want to contribute. They want to have some power to lead to collective, self-determined outcomes in the interest of our municipality. Again, most people want a done-with process, not a done-to one. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hobson. Is there anybody else? Okay, it's a race to the microphone, but there's plenty of time left, so we won't have to worry about that.
I'll be brief. My name is Ron Carter. I'm a resident of Oak Bay, Falkland Road. I'd like to congratulate...
Welcome.
Welcome, thank you. Would like to congratulate Committee of the Whole on their decision to reject the Quest. I too, as with Mr. Hobson, agree that there's some problems with the process for it to get that far along. I believe there were signals with this project that there was a need to be flexible in their design with the issues of the tree and the size and massing of the building. And I believe the developer, had the options to reduce the mass and not have as much impact on the tree. The developer chose not to, went through, yes, a very long process, but I don't think it's certainly not the fault of council at the point where they're just making a decision, which I believe was the correct decision. But at the same time, through the committees and the commissions, there is some ability to perhaps review them and try to shortcut the signals and give developers a chance to redesign. And in this case, that's probably what should have happened. So, congratulations.
Thank you, Mr. Carter.
Hi, my name's Nancy Barnes, and I live at 2340 Oak Bay Avenue.
Welcome.
I didn't come to speak about the process that has just been spoken about, but I did speak about it some while ago, and I do agree that there could be a reconsideration of getting public community involvement in development process much earlier. We're kind of excluded, or had been excluded, until the committee the whole time, really. But anyway, what I did come to say is to express my appreciation for the decision that you did make, and also to let you know that our community group has received over 200 letters of thanks for what the outcome actually was. And I don't know if you've received the same, but I just wanted to pass along to you that we have heard from over 200 people that they also feel that you made the right decision. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Barnes. Anybody else? All right, anybody else? Last for a third time and last time. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kim Coltman, and I live at 967 Bank Street on the Oak Bay border.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here to ask Council to reconsider your recommendation for rejecting the application for the Quest, and instead accept Planning's recommendation to refer it back to staff. I hear what the people are saying, but here I am again. My application has been in process, and I agree 3 years is far too long. We have been given signals all along that we were on the right track. We had the approval from the Advisory Design Panel, the Advisory Planning Commission, and your own planning department actually approved it in terms of its building and its application to the OCP. It did ask that we discussed a few things further in terms of the tree and the building massing. I did hear those concerns and really left with a rejected application and really zero direction from council. The time and the effort, and knowing that we also have 150, 200 letters of support for the Quest, this is unfair to me. And particularly since some of the concerns that were raised, we didn't really have a chance to address. The main issues really that came out of that, I feel, were the tree. This seems to be the elephant in the room constantly. The neighbor's oak tree and, oops, sorry, this is my notes. How to save the tree, we presented the options. Option 1 was removing and replacing the tree, and we felt this was the best thing in terms of best practices for what goes on in development when there's a land change use and so on, and it cannot be saved well, which is the key. It could not be saved well. It was an opportunity to upgrade this green infrastructure. The second option we came forward with was keep the tree. Our application and this proposal does not kill this tree. The arborist says it will not destabilize the tree. It will become shortened in its lifespan. And under this option, the neighbors can keep the tree. And your own arborist says that certain trees survive with up-close construction and it needs more room to breathe. And in fact, this is where the York House could take responsibility. That looks like perhaps, firstly, responsibility to communicate. I had tried constantly over the last 2 years to meet with these people. I reached out, I wrote letters, and suddenly they flatly refused. How am I to do anything when they will not talk with me and come up with some agreement on what to do? The second responsibility would be for them themselves to have a mitigation strategy on their own side of the fence. It is their tree, and they could create viability in their own yard by digging up the front driveway. They have 2 driveways. They could go in and off of York Street. They could dig up the front, create that green space, give the roots some air to breathe on their side of the property. And then it would not need to encroach on my land to live. By neighbors' own admission, there were 6 heritage trees on their land when that building was built. That was infill then. This is infill now, just like 50 years ago. And this tree can no longer survive just on my land. They need room on their own land.
Okay, could you just finish your sentence, please?
Yes, I think we're very, very close to getting this right, which is why planning did recommend that we go back and communicate. And I really would ask that council reconsider and give it some time. There's a lot of money and effort been spent, and I think we can get this right. Thank you
very much. Thank you. And that was the last speaker. No one else coming forward. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to now the 2018 Oak Bay Police Department provisional budget, and it is just a coincidence that those things came out, I'm sure, showing that high statistics, because if it was more than that coincidence, we'd like to know the magic that you worked to get it, the timing. So welcome our Chief Constable, Chief Constable Brinton, and Deputy Chief Constable Bernardis. We have a budget that will be presented tonight, and to see if there's any questions on it. This is a budget that has been presented to the Oak Bay Police Board, and now is being presented for inclusion in our, what we used to call the provisional budget, and we essentially will go forward into the April budget hearings to be dealt with in a final fashion. So this is our chance tonight, Council, to ask any preliminary questions. It won't be our last chance, because we will have Chief Constable back with the budget and for questioning when we actually do the final estimates and finalize our budget in April. What we're looking for after the questions is a motion to approve this provisional budget as recommended by the board, and directing our staff to incorporate it into the 2018 municipal financial plan. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Chief Constable, and or your deputy. And we're, first of all, let me say how glad we are to have you back. I know you were away on after a very unfortunate accident that you had while cycling on Salt Spring, and we're glad you made it through it and are back serving our community. So we have it under number 8, members of council, as well as a detachment, sorry, thinking police here, attachment for the operational and the capital budget, as well as the Chief Constable's report is in front of us now. Turn it over to you, Chief Constable.
Thank you. Thank you for the welcome back. It's good to be back. So I prepared a report which lays out I guess the bottom line. As I indicated, there's 2 aspects to the budget. There's the operating budget, which is our sort of the everyday expenses of running the department, and then there's also capital expenditures which relate to some either larger projects or purchases of items that are beyond $2,500. And it also indicates what the increase is of the operating budget this year, anticipated, which is 0.3%. I do have to be clear that we are currently in bargaining, so any of the budget items that are linked to pay or benefits may see an adjustment of some type, but for now I am presenting a budget with a 0.3% increase. So I've broken it down in the report into sort of overreaching accounts. Within those accounts, obviously, there's multiple line objects. As a group within our department, within the administration group in our department, we have gone through all of those accounts, and there are individual or line objects, I should say. Some are decreased, some have increased depending on need. Some are related to, say, purchases that we forecasted in 2017 which have taken place. We're not going to maintain a line object just for the sake of it. There was certainly scrutiny on it. So under the main categories, what I have done is where there are adjustments or where there's significant increases, and in some cases actually decreases, I've highlighted them for your information. You also have printouts of more of a line-by-line report, and then also a printout that demonstrates the capital items. So I can speak to those a bit more, in particular the capital items, but short of me going through this line by line, are there any, maybe I can just ask for any questions or clarification.
That's a good, yeah. I think we've all had an opportunity to study it as well, and as has the police board before us. So that would probably be a good way to go about it. And let's see if there are questions, specifics, and we'll start. Why don't we just go around the table this way, and we'll start on this side. We'll Councillor Kirby, please.
Thank you, Chair. Through Chair to the Chief, welcome back. I had a question about the line item where it's mentioned that Public Works is no longer able to maintain the buildings or the police building. If you could just clarify what that means and what the plan is instead.
Okay, so our general maintenance of our building is managed by our own people. We have a civilian employee who is tasked with coordinating that. Now, of course, we're a small organization, and that person works, basically, her desk is between ours, so we have a day-to-day relationship with this person. So there is ongoing maintenance. We forecast projects, but we also have to have some contingencies for unexpected. So historically, some of the work, carpentry, basic maintenance, was managed by people within Public Works. There's a capacity issue there, I guess, for lack of a better term. You know, there's only so much work they can do. There's other projects within the municipality. We have to be conscious that we don't, you know, monopolize that service. So what we've done is we've built in, I believe that the number is around $3,200 increase, because we do anticipate that while some of it might be able to be dealt with by Public Works. And for your information, when we do that, we do have internal billing, so we do pay it. We just pay it to other within the municipality. But we also do anticipate that there may be some work that's going to be done by service providers from private, contractors and that sort of thing. So that's what that reference is about.
Go on if you have.
Just a follow-up then. That last part has me a bit concerned because outside contractors generally it's a higher expense to the municipality, because as we have seen report after report from the Columbia Institute on keeping things in-house, how that saves money. I just would be concerned about us moving out to outside contractors and rather than using in-house services and keeping it within the district as much as possible. Yeah, I just would alert you to that issue.
Thank you. Yeah, we're aware of that. One thing I should clarify: when we do when there is internal billing, you know, there are wages, there's benefits, those sort of things. So it's I'm not going to say it's you know a very low cost item versus going to private contractors. These are generally also small projects. We're not talking about you know, in a big addition or anything like that. These are things like you know, repairing a small, you know, drywall fix, or you know, an electrical problem. We're having that. So it is something that we have to manage case by case, and we certainly do. And of course, if it's something of certain size, there's bidding process and that sort of thing. But this account really is earmarked for small sort of day-to-day projects, and I believe that we should be able to manage it without it getting out of hand.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I see your Chief Administrative Officer may want to add something to that.
Just want to clarify. So I think that there has been a practice for a great many years of Public Works and other services within the municipality of which the police department has prevailed and used the services of. But there is times where those projects are far stretching the resources in our Public Works. And so what we have encouraged is, if there are larger projects, anything that's sort of past a day or day and a half, and you can see that there are some number of renovation projects being proposed, those aren't things that we're able to take on. That particular position that has done it in the past has a number of other components, and so we've tried to endeavor to do the municipal functions, and part of that is construction for cement work, part of that is for signage of streets, part of that is for painting, and we've heard a number of issues and concerns by our public, so we're trying to balance the two, and we can't do it all. So if there's a larger project, what we've encouraged is that they look for outside resources. And I'm not sure that those things are necessarily more expensive. It's something that I think, as the chief alluded to, they go through a process, bidding process.
Thank you very much. Okay, Councillor Ney, please.
Thank you, through you, Chair, to the Chief, and yes, welcome back, Chief. It's good to see you again, so well and healthy. Yeah, I just want to, first compliment you on the way you've kind of combed through the budget and taking the time to work the budget lines and delete things when we're not using them, and keep it nice and tight that way. A 0.3% on the operating is looks nice, actually. Just a simple question. You're used to this question I typically ask of your budgets when they come in. It's around the car, the replacement of the community service vehicle. So the question has to do with, is there any consideration of an electric vehicle in this case, and if not, why not?
So the car that we have right now is a compact, small four-cylinder, small car. What we're looking for is a vehicle that's going to be a bit more of a multi-purpose vehicle. So that's why we're targeting on something like a minivan. And the idea behind that is, we'll be able to put removable decals and things on it for visibility at, community projects when we're doing things at the night market and that sort of thing. But we also need it for transporting items. Right now we don't actually have a vehicle that is suitable for transporting larger items, things that we seize, things that we are taking for destruction, that sort of thing. And then also we have occasion where we're taking multiple employees out to training centers, up to 6-7 people, which generally means sending 2, sometimes 3 cars. So it's an enhancement to our fleet to give us that versatility to handle larger projects, but also to enhance our visibility as well. I think you see vehicles around with all the fancy decals and crime prevention, youth-oriented things, and we're visioning that this vehicle is also going to provide a kind of a platform for that as well. And yeah, that's really all I have to say on that right now.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, you're
quick
going to.
follow-up. Yeah.
Yes, indeed, because if you didn't, I would.
Oh, okay. So just back to the point of the query was around the choice of a non-electric vehicle in this case. Is it because, could you just speak to that?
So
thank you.
We considered electric. We have a pretty good understanding of priorities of this community, and a lot of that spoke to the size that we need. So then we went down the road of exploring hybrid vehicles, and what we were getting into to get that kind of size were very expensive. We're talking full-size, like suburban class vehicles to basically get the same size that this vehicle at this is a great savings, and the amount of fuel that we would use over the course of the life of this vehicle would never pay for what that price increase would be to get a hybrid vehicle in the same class of vehicle.
Thank you for the cost-benefit analysis. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, so we start now. Councillor Murdoch, do you have a question? Because we're going in this direction.
We're going around in circles, so I assumed. Thank you, Mayor. So I have just questions, and this is a struggle we always have with public sector budgets, is they tend to be a little bit opaque in terms of what's going in and what's going out. First, congratulations. I think the budget as a whole, very positive, low number overall. I was surprised it wasn't an ask for more carbines for maybe for some deer after your accident, but that's probably very good restraint on your part. My question is really around, the first one is really around, how do we know where the money's coming from for these expenses? We have expenses, but we don't have revenue. So I know we get some money from outside agencies for some of the pieces. I'm not sure. I'm assuming the expenses are noted in here, but not necessarily those incomes. Some money get pulled from reserves, but I think only for capital. Is there any carry forward on operational costs? I guess at the end of the day, what's the impact on taxes is probably that's critical to us around this table. So maybe you can just touch on that about where where this number comes from, not breaking it down line by line, but just overall, are there aspects of this that are not coming from taxes? Does that change the overall impact in terms of a percentage to the taxpayer at the end of the day?
Okay, in the operating budget itself, we have very limited ability for revenue. We make a little bit of money from doing our criminal records checks, but legally, we're actually supposed to be cost neutral on that. It's a very small part of it, but it is built into the spreadsheet when we develop our budget. We make we actually recover some salaries, but that is because we have 3 of our positions are in integrated units that are funded by external funders. So, but those are actually surplus to our establishment of personnel. So we also receive some recoverables from WorkSafe when we have somebody off. But again, those are not revenue because they are simply offsetting a salary that we're not realizing. So when you see salaries, excuse me, that's the net salary. That's after this is for 26 police officers in our establishment, of which really only 23 are being paid by Oak Bay, but we still have to put it through our books the way we deal with pay. So the long and short is under our operating budget, the operating portion of it, there is no external funder. Now, as far as being able to carry forward if we do not spend, so in 2017, there are going to be areas where we likely won't spend. We do have to have some contingencies as insurance policies, for lack of a better term, where there's times where just the way the year went, we weren't able to deliver, for instance, all the training that we'd hoped, that sort of thing. We don't keep that money to take it forward into the following year. It goes to the municipality into a general account. I'm not really in a place where I can speak about how the finance department deals with any excesses that any department in the municipality might realize. But it isn't carried forward to the following year. The one area that we do have some ability to carry forward is in capital. We generally, when we ask for capital, it's for a specific project, and it is generally spent that year. There is one carry forward in capital this year of $6,200. There is actually a chance that actually might be spent in 2017. We're waiting for TELUS to engage in it before we can. It's in the IT area. My gut feeling is we probably won't. So that $6,200 will in fact be carried forward, but that's a capital item. So I hope that answers your question.
It does primarily. The recoveries item on the operational budget, is that all of the recoveries for WCB, the third-party services, like the shared services, integrated services team, is that all in that line item of recoveries then?
That's correct. That's a summary, and without looking at it, I think it's around 512. Is that correct? I might be
around that number, right?
Yeah, that's fine. But yeah, that's what that reference to.
Okay, and do you have any idea what the surplus was departmentally? And I guess you won't know for this year because the year's not over. Do we have any sense of what that has been historically?
It's historically, I believe last year we were, and again, I'm taking don't hold me to this, but I believe it was around 80,000 last year that we didn't spend. But again, it's a number that's really hard to forecast. I can't really forecast this year. We still have things that are being processed. There's certain things where we pay at the end of the year, and there's things that we pay at the beginning of the year, particularly around some of the integrated units and also some of the benefit load.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any sense? I was looking on here for where money got put into some of those reserves, capital reserves, and so forth. Is they just really just for the vehicles? Is that primarily the place that we have reserves, and then the legal reserve, which is also split out as a separate? Is there any other reserves, or are those essentially the total reserves?
When we forecast some maintenance projects or items relating to the building, for instance, those go into a general related reserve within the municipality, of which our portion is earmarked. And that goes with the vehicle replacement reserve. Even though it's earmarked for us, it actually sits in a municipal reserve itself. So there aren't we don't hold a lot of reserves. I know we have about 111,000 in our vehicle replacement reserve. We generally try to stay a couple of vehicles ahead in case there's a catastrophic failure of a vehicle. We didn't purchase one in 2017. I also know that in our computer related area, there isn't a lot of surplus that's budgeted quite finitely, so we actually spend that money each year. And then, of course, as you alluded to, the major crime reserve, that's a reserve that we're actually trying to build for obvious reasons.
Okay, thank you. So just for my clarification, then, this does not include money going into the reserves for the vehicles, is that right?
There is a, I believe it's a $30,000 contribution to the vehicle reserve.
Okay, over, right, 35,000.
35, that's correct.
Okay, perfect, thank you. I'm not going to go through all my questions, because I think the big ones was just sort of understanding how that carried, but so I guess my question is on some of these things, some of the line items. The board is a good example where a fairly small portion of it has been used, but there's an increase because there's some more additional training. I'm guessing this is the end of August. This essentially is what the year-to-date numbers are up to. Is that?
These would be end of September, I'll say.
Okay.
And again, with the police board budget, this year we had budgeted for a certain number of people to go to certain conferences, and for various reasons, some people couldn't make all of them. So there is going to be a unspent balance this year, but next year we anticipate that people will attend. We also have a new board member coming on, and there's certain training that's expected of that person. And on top of that, the province has mandated a mandatory training program for all board members. So all of our board members will have to take that training, regardless if they're our current standing board members or not.
I guess in the big picture, this, like ours, it's nice to have some more clarity in terms of what's being spent and what's not online, because you're sort of going here guessing about which is the important stuff and which isn't. But right. I appreciate that's difficult to do in this format. The other question I had just was under protective services, repairs and supplies. Part of that is listed as South Island real-time intelligence in that. What all does repairs and supplies line item? What does that cover?
So that's a very broad account. So that's a lot of equipment. That's things like radar guns, the maintenance of those. We have a contingency for the use of crime labs, forensic labs, if we have to send things away for analysis. The equipment used for detecting alcohol in your breath, the toximeters, that sort of thing, just the general maintenance and the acquisition of that type of equipment, ammunition for training, that sort of thing. But within that also is a couple of areas that we contribute to, which is, as you mentioned, this real-time intelligence center, which is that's something that we're anticipating in 2018 that we're going to have to engage in to some degree. It's a little bit premature to talk about how that's going to look. And then we're also part of the criminal intelligence sharing. Sorry, that's me. How dare they? It's a 1-800 number. It's probably one of those phone calls. So anyway, it's a very broad account. Everything from evidence bags and upwards from there.
No, fair enough. It struck me as an odd. It had to be something odd collection given what was asked for in the title. Okay, and I just have two more questions. So, can you explain to us there's a superannuation, which I think is his pension contributions, budget of $500,000 $500,000. Can you just explain how that superannuation is used, and is that's entirely paid for out of on the employer side? I take it for the pensions, and why that's included as a separate line item as opposed to as just part of benefits?
Okay, so the way it's in our, actually, I thought that it was under, like there was unemployment insurance contributions and other items that were in that same area. If it doesn't show up on your printout, that it is one of many, not many, but the various benefits. And we're provided those numbers by finance every year because as our members come and go, they're at varying service levels, so their pay changes according to how much service they have. So it's a number that varies every year. So there's a calculation that's actually done by the municipal finance department, and they provide that number to us to insert into our budget each year.
Okay, but it is the pension
Yes.
payment, that is
Yes.
correct, okay. And then the last question, I do apologize for going on a bit here, was just the, there's an extra line item there of transfers to reserves for retirement, so that's not pensions, I take it. Can you explain what that is, the $10,000 a year?
Right, so there's a benefit in the collective agreement that states that if you've been with the department for in excess of 15 years, there's a severance pay that's based on how much service you have. And so what we do is we need to have an amount sitting there so that if a member can give us 2 weeks notice and go, so we have to be in a position that it's not a liability. So like we're not carrying a liability. So what we do each year is we sit down and we look at how many members meet that 15-year with the department criteria, and if they were to go this year, what would the severance be? And we create a number based on that. So that's what this number is. And again, finance, I believe finance will give us a hint saying we think you should contribute $10,000 this year to be where you need to be. So that's where this $10,000 figure came this year.
Okay, thank you. And sorry, is that after 15 years they go to retirement, or just if they leave after 15 years for any reason, if they go to a different job?
I believe it's to retirement, but don't quote me on that.
All right, thank you very much.
It's an obligation under the collective agreement currently. Yep. Councillor Croft, any questions?
Oh, just through you, Chair, I just have one quick question. It's actually a three-part question. You're asking for funding for 3 capital projects that total $32,000. I'm wondering if we could just review those very quickly, just so that we understand where that money is going.
Okay, so
I can help you a bit.
yeah.
Okay,
Leading questions are allowed in this forum.
Okay, so one is something about retrofitting the holding cell. The second one is about mobile software, and the third one is about replacing your heat pump so that you keep warm and cool.
Okay, thank you. So yes, the heat pump slash air conditioner has been failing, and we've had the people who service it have basically advised us that it's at end of life or near end of life, and they've made a recommendation that it be replaced. And so that's one item. That's $12,000 is the cost that we've been, and that includes installation. The office reorganization. We have a holding cell, if you want to call it that, in our department. It by no means meets today's standards for a holding cell, and it actually hasn't been used for one for years. We actually have, within our service agreement with Sandage, they do all our prisoner handling for us. So we've got this space in a building that we've really outgrown. So we have this fairly substantial piece of real estate in that building that's not really being used. So we actually had some estimates done to turn it into an equipment room, do some reorganization of some office space elsewhere. We realized in the big, that was probably going to be closer to 25 to do that, and we just realized that right now it's probably not the right time, just with other expenses. So what we costed out was some basic drywall work, some electrical work that would need to be done. And we came to a figure of $10,000 to make that happen. And the third one was the Airwatch MDT security. And that's something that's actually mandated on us. And so the MDTs are the mobile workstations that are in each police car, the computer. And if one of those was to be stolen, there's no way to remotely control it, I'll put it for lack of a better term. So that's probably one of the biggest features to it. Also would allow to track it and that sort of thing. But that's something that's basically being mandated on us, that we have to do that for our, we have 5 terminals in our organization.
Thank you. No further questions.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, please.
Thank you. The beautiful thing about going last is that everybody's already asked all my questions. So I'm going to make a comment, and that is on your community program line item. And I just wanted to say that I'm so happy to see that you're actually increasing that, because the Reserve Constable program, I think, is a great program, and we see them out on the street all the time, including last night at the light up, and they are just a really, they're a really likable bunch of people, because I get to chat with them often, and so I'm really pleased to see that we're putting more money into that. So thank you for your budget, and welcome back.
Thank you. Yeah, just for your information, we, our reserve program has put in excess of 1,000 hours of volunteer work. Actually, if you include SANAGE, which do come to some of our events, we're over 1,300 hours of volunteer work. That's just, you really can't put a price on that. And I just want to quickly clarify something about that account. Years ago, ICBC funded a counterattack program in which there was, we're going a long ways back, and it was a bit of an unaccountable program where a lot of agencies, departments were provided a certain amount of fund every year, and we didn't always spend it. So a reserve built because of that. So for the last number of years, our reserve program has been operating on money that we had in this reserve. Now what's happened is we've depleted that. And the true cost to actually run this program is in the tune of the number that I put forward. So this is a number that we're going to see moving forward. But we had many years of having a benefit that there was really no cost to it.
Well, it's a great program, so thank you.
Thank you.
And just to underline the greatness of it, we recognized, we just had a dinner, I think it was last Friday, and where we recognized and thanked the reserves same night that we show our appreciation for the block watch captains throughout, of which we have some nearly 60, I think, blocks that are involved in the program. It's a great thing for public safety. Okay, are there any other questions that were raised by the first round of questions? Okay, I see none, so I am prepared to entertain that motion.
Move the motion.
Second.
Okay, that's the one I mentioned earlier. Now, discussion. I see none. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much, Chief and Deputy, and we'll see you, well, we'll see you before April, but in terms of discussing this budget further, we'll see you in April on that issue. Thank you. We move on to number 9, which is our tree protection bylaw. This is an application by a resident at 882 Island Road, who I see here tonight, for reconsideration of a refusal for a permit to reduce, take down a tree on her property. We have a report before us by our Parks Manager, Mr. Chris Hyde-Lay, who sets out the issue fairly clearly for us. You should note there's a piece of correspondence that was added to our agenda. So what I'm going to do is the order of business is going to be that we ask Mr. Hyde-Lay to give us an overview of how this came to us, the various steps in it, which I've alluded to, and some factual background about the tree itself, and the reasons for rejection of a permit to remove the tree, at which point I'll call upon the applicant to come forward and, if she wishes, to state why we should reconsider and the grounds for reconsideration. We have before us, just as a reminder, the particular piece of our bylaw that under which the permit can be issued. That's section 6. Sorry, I have to magnify this a little bit. There it goes. Section 6 of the Tree Protection Bylaw 2006. And we can see the grounds that a permit can be issued, and we also see the a bit of the process about coming to council. All right. Mr. Hyde-Lay, welcome.
Thank you,
That
Mayor
doesn't mean
Jensen.
you've only got 3 minutes to speak, by the way, when I say that.
I'll keep it short. Thank you, Mayor Jensen, fellow council members. The tree in question is located at the right rear of the property at 882 Island Road. It is a Leyland Cypress tree, which is a cross between the yellow cedar and Monterey cypress. It is commonly referred to, and it probably is, the fastest growing conifer in the world, easily growing to a meter or more once established. Very tolerant of a wide range of soil conditions and temperature, making it a somewhat of a popular choice for a tree that can be planted and get the required result of a very fast screen. I refer to them as more of a species that is far more suited to hedging than to be grown as a single coniferous tree. There are better coniferous trees than this. It's somewhat prone to failure in wind and certainly snow load because of its rapid growth. You have a considerable gap in the actual increments in the wood that doesn't particularly make it strong. The request was made to remove the tree. Under Section 6, we couldn't find any of the 12 clauses that would allow us to give the go-ahead, and this is why it has come to council for reconsideration. I'll finish by saying that when selecting a Leyland Cypress for your landscape, be careful.
So does that mean that you wouldn't recommend it for any?
I would not recommend Leyland Cypress as a single specimen conifer.
Okay, in an urban environment
In
where
an
there's a
urban
limited
environment.
size. Okay. Let's see if there's any questions from council to Mr. Hyde-Lay, please. Councillor Braithwaite and Councillor Murdoch. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so what I'm hearing is that that your hands are kind of tied by this bylaw, by our tree protection bylaw. And I know we're having a review of the tree protection bylaw under the under a few things under Parks and Rec and Culture. But I think that from what it sounds like, when I looked at the bylaw, it really does seem like that your hands are tied based on this, what you feel this tree is kind of the wrong tree for the wrong place, or the wrong place for the wrong tree, and it's also suppressing the chestnut tree, I think, in that location as well. Correct? So really, no matter what, you wouldn't be able to give out a consideration of removing the tree, so that's why you had to come to council. And I think that really, when I look at it, it seems to me that it is the wrong tree for the wrong place. And so I'm really adverse to allowing trees to be removed in our municipality. But I think in this particular case, it looks like to me that this is in fact the wrong tree for the wrong place. And so it should perhaps go ahead. So thank you for bringing this forward. And I'll wait to hear the comments of my fellow councillors.
Okay. I'd prefer questions to Mr. Hyde-Lay at this point, an expression of views a little later, because we haven't heard from the applicant just yet. So, Councillor Murdoch, questions, please.
Yeah, just two quick questions. Did you have a chance to have, or is there any sense of the health of the chestnut tree that is beside this this Leyland cypress?
Yes, Councillor Murdoch, the chestnut tree is healthy but suppressed by the size and mass of the Leyland Cypress tree.
Okay, the question then would be, do you have, there's different ways of valuing trees, obviously. We had this conversation around the one on Oak Bay Avenue recently with the oak tree. What is, can we actually apply a value? Because one of the options here in terms of looking at this is the impact on surrounding materials and if it's is there a value attached to a cypress to a chestnut tree we could apply here, or is that just sort of beyond the pale of consideration?
No, certainly value can be applied to a Leyland Cypress tree in regards to what they would give back to the community. Actually, conifers are a tree that really give year-round benefit, unlike, deciduous trees do too, but as far as stormwater or rainwater retention, conifers are at work every day of the year, whenever it rains. So do deciduous trees, but far to a lesser degree when there's no leaves on them. So there's certainly value to the tree.
Okay, thank you. I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Councillor Nee, then Councillor Croft, please. Councillor Nee.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Hidley. I was just wondering if you could help me understand the kind of damage that the tree is capable to the property owner, because in the arborist report at the end there, we see that the way the tree's dynamic is described is that though it can be heavily damaged by a load of wet snow or winter winds, the limbs, it sounds like they partially fall under the snow, but that they remain attached to the tree. And from the applicant here, it sounds like the limb has actually broken off and fallen onto their property. I'm just wondering if you could speak to the behavior of the tree under those kinds of conditions.
They would be referred to a tree that is a tree that somewhat misbehaves with various winter conditions or storm conditions. They're a tree that, not that we have many on municipal land, but they're a tree that we see when there is a storm that there's usually some failure associated to them, much like certain pines. This tree even more so, just because of its absolute rapid growth and very little strength in the wood.
Through your chair, a follow-up, if you don't mind. That last comment you said, then, so is it precarious? I mean, because as I understand the tree, it's intended for hedge growth, and it's a lot been able to sort of go out of control, perhaps unknowingly. But nevertheless, the rapid growth you're saying has left the tree without the kind of strength you'd want to see in a tree. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and that genetically, that's just the way that they grow.
Okay.
And they're all like that, and they just make a poor specimen tree.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you, through Chair. Will there be a requirement for replacement because this is a protected tree? Will there be 2 trees or whatever the numbers that we're using?
It's not specifically laid out that way in the bylaw, and I don't know if the applicant would be open to that idea, but certainly a good idea.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that's something the applicant can volunteer to do, should she wish. The question, any other questions? I have a question in terms of the grounds. Some of them are fairly straightforward, but I take it ground 12 to permit removal of a tree. If you just pull that up. It's somewhat of a subjective, I take it, evaluation. And it says, to remedy an undue hardship attributable to the material and deleterious effect of the tree on an improvement of significant value located on the subject parcel or on land adjoining the subject parcel, which in layman's terms would mean if it's harsh on the house and the living conditions that it may create for people in the house, correct? Is that something, that subjectivity that you apply, or is that something you would look to council to apply?
I would say that 12 is open for interpretation, and it's one thing that we certainly want to work on clarity when we rewrite the bylaw, is the actual term undue hardship. But right now, yes, it's subjective.
Okay, thank you very much. No other questions? I see the applicant here. Is the applicant going to speak or have a representative? Or maybe you, don't know if you hired a lawyer or whatever. Come on forward. We're going to ask you to just speak on the microphone, give your name, and we know where you live now, 882. And you have to be fairly close to the microphone so it can be recorded in the live streaming. Yes, please.
Right. Thank you.
So, welcome. I'm not sure how to address you, but I think it's now is Ms. Dorgan.
Jacqueline Dorgan is my name. Yes, I live at 882 Island Road, along with my husband, Butch Amon, who's here.
Okay. Welcome.
Thank you. We're asking pursuant to section 19 and 21.1 for you to exercise your discretion and allow the permit that we've sought in respect of this tree. I appreciate that Mr. Paul, the arborist who came out, has very limited discretion pursuant to the bylaw. And I too am interested in section 6 sub 12 of the bylaw, because in my respectful submission, this tree has, over the years we've lived there, interfered with our enjoyment of our property without question. And as has our neighbors, Leyland to the south, interfered with our enjoyment of our property. And certainly our tree, the one that we requested a permit for, has interfered with the enjoyment of the property of the people next door to the north, who have written in support of this application. The Leyland at issue is protected not because of its species. It's protected under the bylaws by definition because of its girth. And the irony of it is, it's what makes it difficult to live with, its girth. As soon as a tree has a diameter at breast height, a DBH, in excess of 60 centimeters, which this one more than meets that criterion, doubles actually, it's a protected tree, regardless of the fact that it isn't one of the protected trees by species. This tree is not a Gary oak, it's not an arbutus, it's not a Pacific Western yew, a black hawthorn, or a Pacific Western flowering dogwood, nor is it a significant tree, as is set out in Schedule B to the bylaw. So the fact of its girth is what makes it protected, and it's exactly that interferes with our enjoyment. I would like to say right off the bat that we did not plant this tree, not because we knew that a Leyland grows faster than you'd ever imagine. We knew nothing about it, but it was there 26 years ago when we moved into Island Road. We spent quite a long time improving the house and the property to a lesser degree because this was a rundown arts and crafts house when we moved into it. We've managed to bring the house back to where it should be, where it deserves to be, and it has beautiful street appeal and so on. And now we're looking at our backyard. Now, what do we want a backyard for? We want it to be pleasant. We want to be able to grow things, flowers, things that berry to bring more birds and butterflies and so on. And this tree and its mate that is immediately adjacent to our property, it's actually on the property line to the south, means that we have darkness in our backyard, which is west facing, not what you expect, from at least 3 o'clock on. So it's actually no fun to garden there, and it's very difficult to garden there. This tree, because of its girth, has a drip line that's probably, and you could help me here, it's at least 20 feet from the trunk of that tree. You can't plant anything.
It's 65 feet tall with a 50-foot spread.
Well, there you go. I mean, if you were to plant something that might be able to grow other than a hosta, but the deer really like the hosta, so that wouldn't work very well. So we'd get something else planted there that birds would like and butterflies would like. It would be right in the center of the backyard where our grandkids do their gymnastic flips. So we're kind of just stuck in terms of wanting to do any gardening there. If we ever were to consider an application to council to build an accessory building on the lot at the back, garage, carport, tool shed, garden shed, there is no place to put it. This tree takes up that much of the property. And the tree immediately south of us, adjacent, has a spread into our property, which goes halfway into our yard. You can't build anything there either. But the point is, why would we go to the trouble of getting a design, drawing plans, applying to the municipality for a permit, when we've got a tree that doesn't allow us to do any of the building, even if it was okayed? So we wouldn't do that. And I'm not suggesting to you that we'd like to do that tomorrow, but it's restricting the use of this property. It's our respectful submission that granting this permit would not defeat the intent of the bylaw. As we heard from Mr. Clyde Lay, this is a fast-growing coniferous tree, should be used for a hedge, not as a standalone tree. It does grow very rapidly, and the thing is, this darn tree isn't finished growing. We, about 6 or 7 years ago, spent a significant amount of time and effort and money getting it thinned, taking something off the top, not very, very much, but some. Everything, and we did see the sky through this tree. It's very dense growth, it's very dark. That's gone, and it was gone pretty well 2 years after having done that. So again, with respect to Mr. Paul, who suggests that this tree and that of our neighbors to the south could be trimmed up or down by 30 to 40%, and that's the permit that he did grant us, is simply no answer. It costs an enormous amount of money to get an arborist to thin these trees, and 2 years later you're right back where you started. In fact, we're quite satisfied that the thinning probably gave it license to grow faster. But we don't have any scientific evidence of that. I should say that the Lalonde to the south, that was probably planted about the same time as this one on our property, was the subject of an application for removal in September, as I understand it. Their application for removal, which we were cheering for, was turned down. And that young family just didn't want to take the steps of going through the reconsideration, though we wish they had. They had people ready to build a fence, booked and lined up, and so the people that they'd hired to cut the tree down, assuming they'd get the permit, took some branches off. And this is the tree that fell onto one of the limbs you were asking about in last winter with the snow load did break off, in fact. It wasn't broken completely from the trunk of the tree. It broke off rested on our clothesline and broquette and on the chestnut, which is squished. And speaking of the squished chestnut, this is an old-fashioned PowerPoint. I'd like you to look at
Old school PowerPoint, okay. Thank you. And so, for the record, you've shown us photograph number 1. We don't file exhibits in this, but one is photograph number 1, and they're taken on November 27th, and the other one, appropriately numbered, photograph number 2, taken on September the 21st, both of this year.
Number 2 shows the squished chestnut. Number 1 shows the height of this tree in relation to the applicant before you.
Okay.
Wikipedia, the authority on all things, says this about a Leyland. It's a fast-growing conifer. Its rapid, thick growth means that it's sometimes used for privacy, but such use should be carefully considered because it can result in disputes with neighbors whose property become overshadowed. And that's true in my experience. The lack of sun, in terms of the use and enjoyment of this property, of our property, the lack of sun in the west-facing backyard, which is important when you're in your workplace all day, makes the yard too cold to enjoy. We haven't eaten a meal in the evening outside for years. The lack of light, the volume and nature of this growth is unpleasant, I'd have to say. And it restricts what else you can grow there, as I've noted. So in closing, I would just say that this tree restricts the use and certainly the enjoyment of our property and of our neighbor to the north. The neighbors to the south, with their Leyland, have not renewed a further permit application. They are not opposed to the application that we seek here today. So I ask you to carefully exercise your discretion, which I'm sure you will, and to substitute your interpretation of this bylaw for that of Mr. Paul, having regard to the species here, wrong tree, wrong place, the form of the tree, that is the shape and growth that is deleterious to the enjoyment and use of the property by the registered owners. And I ask you to remedy that hardship. And in so doing, I suggest that the council would not be defeating the intent of the bylaw, which is to ensure that in the public interest, there's a measured approach to the growth and planting and damage of trees so that we all enjoy them. I would finally note that in the memorandum of Mara Jones, if the council found it in their discretion to reconsider the permit and issue it, I would prefer that the motion read that it be issued for 882 Island Road rather than Transit. It might be a bit of a surprise to those people.
Probably be a good idea. So thank you very much for, just remain there, please.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your respectful submissions. And I assume from what I hear that you're really directing our attention to the section 6 of the bylaw, the one I asked a question on.
Section
from
612.
Mr. Hidlay, subsection 12, correct?
That's right.
And you're just what you said near the end about the discretionary related to the other section, related to not defeating the purpose of the bylaw under those 4 items: species, form, condition, and general density, correct?
That's correct.
The one thing you didn't address, and I don't know if you wish to turn your mind to, is the issue of replacement trees.
Yes.
If you've thought about that, I know there was a question raised here, and we heard, I think, from Mr. Hyde-Lay that that's something that's not required, but it's discretion on your part. Have you given any thought to that? Because one of the goals is to maintain a tree canopy in Oak Bay.
It wasn't noted in the permit that was granted to us. The permit that was granted to us was about reducing the tree by 30 to 40%. And I would have expected that if that was the expectation of the arborist, he would have noted that on the permit that he granted us. That being said, we're happy to talk to experienced arborists about what to do. We don't want to plant another Leyland type tree if we were able to get this one down so that we had the room to do so. We would be delighted to speak to the municipal arborist about replacements.
So that's something you would certainly, by the sounds of what you say, be prepared to do, make a replacement tree or trees, as can be discussed with our, if we give you
Trees
permission.
makes me a little bit nervous, I have to say. I don't know that I'd be going to the nursery for a dozen trees.
No, but we're talking one or two kind of thing. Yeah.
And that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. Now, let's just see if there's any other questions from councillors on what you've said. Thank you very much. Councillor Kirby, please.
Thank you. Thanks for your presentation. I just had a question about the maintenance costs of the tree so far. And if you could just give us an idea of how much it would cost to, if you were to maintain the tree at some safe height, like with the reduction of the limbs like you'd done 2 years ago, or however many years ago.
6 or 7, yes.
6 or 7 years ago. If that, the cost of maintenance of keeping the tree within sort of a safe range where you could protect yourselves and your neighbors from further damage to the other trees and your fences. If you could just give us an idea of how much that cost.
First of all, the extent to which you could cut back this tree and cut it down, top it, is a problem. We talked to 3 different arborists before we did the thinning that we did do 6 or 7 years ago. They don't want to top it. They don't want to take 40 feet off that tree. They think that it won't look good. That was the information we were given by arborists, that it might lead it to becoming diseased rather quickly. They didn't want to do that. That's what would bring some kind of interim relief. And it's for a very short time. So it's not a very good solution. We paid $2,500.
Okay, thank you. That gives me an idea.
And if you have to do that every couple of years,
yeah,
and you get a very poor product, you're not going to do it.
Yeah,
it's as simple as that.
Absolutely
Really.
Understand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Braithwaite, go ahead.
Sure. Actually, this is more of a question for Mr. Paul. Sorry, Mr. Hidley. So if we did agree to allow this tree to come down, then its brother or sister tree would probably either have a lot more room to grow quickly, or that there's a chance that they're going to come and ask to have that one taken down as well. So really, we could be losing 2 significantly large trees, although not useful trees by the sound of it, from that area. So would you concur with that? That's probably what will happen?
That's correct, Councillor Braithwaite.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Murdoch.
Well, could I just respond to that? It wasn't a question that was directed to me. But while Mr. Paul didn't mention it in his report, there are many trees on the lots in our neighborhood.
Right, yeah. No, I've looked at it from Google Earth from above, and I've
Oh,
seen,
good.
yeah.
Okay.
It is one of the considerations, the general density of the protected tree in the area. Councillor Murdoch, please.
Thank you. So my first, again, obviously not your favorite tree in the world, this thing. It
would help if it was prettier.
Yeah, well, that's I guess my second part of my question. Then there is a chestnut. It's a horse chestnut, I assume, in the back. So they get very large. They get quite a large spread.
Yes.
They provide the shade in the summer, not the winter, more or less. But is that a tree that you're expecting to let grow and over time?
We hope it'll recover in terms of shape. It's completely misshapen. We're not looking to take the chestnut away. There are a couple of things about it. Leaves on chestnut flutter. They let a lot of light into into the area around it. A Lalande does not. It's like looking into a dark wall, a Lalande. The chestnut also gives us a lot more light in the winter. If it were a standalone tree and came back to its or was allowed to reach its potential splendor, you get a lot of light from a deciduous tree in the winter, of course.
Yes. So I guess that leads my question to, because I think this is probably a question that Mr. Hadley would know more than you. What is the size, like if a chestnut does grow like that? Is that, I'm just looking at, we look at lot coverage and so forth under the tree protection bylaw and in the forest strategy. Would this grow to something equivalent to the Lalande over time?
Most likely larger, Councillor Murdoch. The chestnut trees that are in the Cook Street Village, for example, were planted in between 1900 and 1910. So there's longevity, and they're a very tough tree.
Okay, thank you.
And they're attractive.
Okay,
so I'm sure I'll have to judge that, but there we go.
Any other questions? No other questions. So thank you very much.
Thank you,
Mr.
Councillor.
Dorgan. Pleased to have you appear before us. Thank you. We have two issues before us for the discussion. First, and I think it seems pretty clear that 6 sub 12 is the one we need to consider. And has it met the test there? That being the undue hardship, et cetera, and then whether the second part is we satisfied that the issuance of the permit, having regard to the 4 factors that I've mentioned, wouldn't defeat the intent of the bylaw. So those are kind of a 2-step kind of discussion we want, or if someone wants to launch into a motion, we can do it that way too.
I can do a motion,
Okay.
unless you have a question. No. I would move that the issuance of a permit for the removal of a Leyland Cypress tree located on the private property at 882 Island Road be ordered pursuant to Section 6, subsection 12 of the Tree Protection Bylaw.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion. Okay, do we have a discussion? Okay, go ahead. Councillor Kirby,
I just
please.
had one quick question for Mr. Chris Hadley. Just regarding, through you, Chair, is there a fir tree across the lane in the back? From Google Earth, it appears that there's a fir tree right beside this that's just as large. There's something else. There's another tree that's as large as the Leylandi, and I'm wondering if this might allow that tree more growth, because it is an evergreen and far hardier. And in my opinion, I think it's hardier to the more extreme weather.
Thanks, Councillor Kirby. I can't answer that with any accuracy. I didn't look. But there are a few Leylands in the area.
Yeah, I see that there's several down the lane. There's another whole row of them that appear smaller, but all like smaller in diameter. So they might not be protected, but they will be soon enough at this rate. So, my only concern is that we set some kind of precedent here, and then we see the entire neighborhood lose not one, and two, the neighboring tree, and then down the lane, a whole other row of them, without some consideration to what that might do to our overall tree canopy. the bigger picture to me is what we're trying to aim for here, and without, I can't use the pun, but seeing the forest for the trees.
Glad you didn't use it, then, thank you.
I just would be concerned that we, in order to alleviate the burden on one family, which is like enormous, that's a ridiculous expectation to see that somebody spend $2,500 biannually to maintain a tree. While we do that, I would like to make sure that we educate the neighboring property owners that there are other options, and that we find some way to start planting more amenable species.
And if this motion passes, then there, it sounds like it's going to be a discussion along those lines between Ms. Dorgan and our staff. Choose one that is recommended. Okay, no other question, discussion? Okay, go ahead, Councillor Murdoch.
Well, I guess I think we if we're going to consider this, we have to give some justification for not just saying the number, but giving a justification. I think it's important to recognize too that this is we have a few of these applications that come forward to us, and they're generally turned down. There has to be a pretty compelling reason for approving it. Not least of which is that the bylaw doesn't give us a lot of wiggle room either. It's not just a discretionary piece. We have to actually articulate why, what section of this we come to, and why we see that applies in this case. And this is a fairly narrow aspect. And in fact, of the 12, 11 of them clearly don't apply, and 12 is kind of a stretch, I think, in this one in terms of what it looks like. So when I was making my notes for this, I was really having a hard time seeing the justification. And my thought on this one was, the hardship in this case is really to the enjoyment and the ability to grow things in the gardens in the shadow of this tree, and recognizing that the tree itself is not an ideal species for this kind of piece. So, but I did think at that point that I would really want to see something from the neighbor to see that they were also seeing hardship. My initial take was that we should just probably table this and have the neighbors come forward, and if they're supportive as well, that would probably make the case. And we, of course, turned out that we have a letter from your neighbor articulating that. So if I'm looking at this, I think that I can see the case for this, that in fact, the material improvements that have value that we can cite in this case would be the gardens, the plantings, the food growth, whatever you want to put in those gardens, are being very hampered by this tree. And I think that's cause justification for this. But I think it's important that at least we make some effort to clarify why, so it's not just a precedent that it's a bad tree and big, that it has some specific hardship. So that would be my argument in this case, and I will support the motion.
Thank you. I think there are clear justifications for approving this under the circumstances, what we've heard from Ms. Dorgan. So I think it certainly meets the criteria of undue hardship and a deleterious effect on the improvement of significant value. And it doesn't defeat the intent of the bylaw given this. With respect to whether or not this will be a precedent which will bring other trees down, I think each case has to be judged on its own merits and own circumstances, where the tree is, the nature of the property, the nature of the specific effect on the house in this case. So I don't see it as creating a precedent. So I think we're ready for, I don't see any other hands, we're ready for the question. And the motion is to issue a permit for the removal of the tree in question. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Thanks for your attention to the details, Ms. Dorgan, and we thank Mr. Hidlay for laying it out for us in such a plain and simple way, and giving us that kind of needed information. Thank you. We move on to number 8. That's the minutes of the Heritage Commission, which we generally receive. In this case, it's the 10th of October. Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you. No correspondence. There's nothing under 9. Let me just double check, pull up my electronic version. Where were protection? I said number 9, but it's really doesn't have a number.
Your Worship, there is a piece of correspondence that came in late. I apologize. So there is just a need for a motion to receive that.
Okay.
Move receipt.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Not opposed. We go now to new business report or reports from other committees. Let's first of all see if there's new business. Councillor Murdoch?
Yes, thank you. New business. This is just a follow-up on some discussion that we've had, some correspondence we've received here about the development of some or foreshore protection and the Green Shores initiatives and so forth. And it's come to my attention that there's a group that's looking to do some presentations and education on the protection of foreshores coming up, and they're interested in doing so to Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities in April, and that their application to do that, the executive director there prefers if there's some showing support from municipalities that they would actually have some interest in such a topic. So I have a quick motion if the council is interested in supporting it. It would just be one quick whereas. Whereas foreshore development best practices and environmental protection of our oceans are of broad interest to member communities of the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities. I would move that Oak Bay indicate to the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal Communities, or AVICC, the district's support for the inclusion of a presentation on foreshore protection tools and Green Shores development guidelines at the 2018 AVICC conference.
Okay, so so be it resolved, that kind of thing, is that what you got that written out for Mr. Jones? I suppose we could treat it as a notice of motion, but if we're all in agreement that we would do it tonight.
I can second that, sir.
I suppose so that we don't need a notice of motion. Okay. If there's a consensus, I see there's a consensus because no one's saying lack of consensus.
Second but I would just like
It's been seconded, so that's okay.
amend the motion slightly to include
okay, so hang on.
Something else.
So let's first of all see whether or not we're going to treat this as a motion or a notice of motion. I see no one objecting at this point that we're going to treat it as a motion that's live tonight. So we'll proceed that way. It's been moved, it's been seconded. Now, are you proposing an amendment?
Yes.
Okay, and what is that amendment, please?
I would just like to include another group that I had already invited to workshop at AVICC. It's the same group that did the mapping of our foreshore eelgrass beds, sea change, and I contacted 2 members of that group to present a workshop or a plenary session of some kind at AVICC. Okay. So I would hope we could include that group as well.
So the amendment is?
To include sea change in as part of the invitation to. I can't think of the wording. I'm sorry.
Okay. Well, maybe Mr. Jones can assist here.
Your Worship, one thing Council might want to consider is just for the AVICC, putting the nature of the topic that you would like to see addressed as opposed to specific groups,
right.
Because they will go out and try to find those or use their own means to do that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I don't think the intention of, I'll ask Councillor Murdoch, the intention wasn't necessarily to invite a specific group, but to put the topic on the list, and then AVICC will go and find out who the speakers, et cetera, are, right? Was that the intention of the motion?
In fact, it's worded that way specifically to avoid any endorsement of a group or specific. It's just really, I was just aware of this one, and I would have, in fact, it may even be included in that because it talks about foreshore protection and green shores, but there may be also some near shore protection pieces as well that could be added. If that's the desire of council, it may be better just to table this, and I can come back, do a notice of motion and come back if that's preferred. I don't want to have a big debate here on wording.
No. I just was making sure that if we're sending a letter of endorsement, that it didn't exclude the people that I'd already invited to participate, and also that it would be excellent actually if we can lump it all together and then have them both there, or but I thought you were specifically asking for a presentation by the group, a specific group, so that's where my concern lied.
Yeah, so it's the topic that's being requested, not a group
I would absolutely support that.
Okay, it's not a group that Councillor Murdoch has in mind, and certainly doesn't exclude the group you have in mind. What about you, Mr. Jones? You have your hand up too.
Sorry, it doesn't matter to me at all. The point I wanted to make was that I know my staff colleagues at the AVICC, they're in the process of starting to prepare for that conference. So if you are able to deal with this tonight, I know
Sooner
they
the
really
better.
appreciate that.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so let's have a discussion now. It's a live motion. It's a generic motion for a topic. Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you. I was just wondering whether we should include something that we would solicit the support of the other municipalities on the island to support this kind of activity at AVICC.
Okay, so that, if that would be an amendment, and it would probably go along lines, and we write, and we send this motion to other communities, either in the CRD or on the island, depending on, because you're making the motion, to encourage them to send a similar request forward. Now, given your colleagues on AVICC, Mr. Jones, do you think that would have an impact? The more people that ask, the more likely it'll be a topic?
I suggest it probably would be the case, yeah.
Okay. So we would need, the motion essentially would be to send this request to others, other municipalities, and do you wish it to be in the CRD or the whole island? Because that's a lot of letters. But anyway.
Your
I'm
Worship,
happy
it
with the
would
CRD.
be, sorry for jumping, it would be best to send it to members of the AVICC.
Good idea. So you'd exclude it? Is that what you had in mind? All right?
Yes.
Okay, have you got
Second.
this, have you got that wording, Mr. Jones?
Your Worship, if all council was in agreement, we could just make that a friendly amendment and
Okay.
just move, yeah.
Are we all in agreement of the friendliness of the amendment? Okay, it's a friendly amendment. So there it is. Okay, now, Councillor Murdoch, you made the original motion. Would you like to speak to it? Although it's pretty self-evident.
I don't think I need to speak to it.
Okay.
Let's move on.
Okay, I think we're probably ready for the question. I see no other hands. Thank you very much. I call the question on the motion and the friendliness of it. All in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Thank you very much. Thanks for your assistance, Mr. Jones, in getting us to this point, and thanks to Councillor Murdoch for suggesting it is a very important question to all islanders. Any other new business? No other, oh, yes, there's a little bit of new business. Yes, Councillor Croft, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to make sure everybody's aware of the Art on the Avenue Gallery Walk by the BIA this November 30th. We heard about the Sea of Lights December 1st, and on December 2nd, we have the truck light convoy coming to the municipality for at 5 o'clock till 7:30. I also like to thank staff for advertising the Smart South Island Symposium, which Councillor Murdoch and I attended this weekend, and there will be a video coming out that I would like to share with council and the community when that becomes available.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, yeah, sorry I missed that, the art walk in my remarks. I'm glad you brought that up. Any other new business? Seeing none. No report from the CRD. We are meeting next Wednesday, not this week, but the following week. Any other verbal reports? Yes, Councillor Kirby, please.
I just wanted to report that the mayor and I attended Willows Elementary School last Thursday morning for a presentation to the students by professional urban planners and architects on how to build a safe street. And the kids were very enthusiastic. I saw no less than like 5 hands up at all times throughout the presentation. And we did a little walkabout the neighborhood and looked at some of the more dangerous areas and intersections around the school to highlight to the kids what they could do to improve safe streets and improve their safety getting to and from school. So this is a part of the Active and Safe Routes to School program that the CRD put on, began 2 years ago, and it's now wrapping up, and it's a part of the program that I personally never imagined possible, and it's very exciting to see kids getting involved in reimagining their cities as places and their streets as places for people, and especially kids of all ages to be able to travel safely to and from school. So I thought it was an excellent initiative by the Willows School PAC and our Parent Advisory Committee, and along with other volunteers from the community that helped to make that happen. It was just an awesome experience. And also Constable Luter, who is the Oak Bay Police School Liaison Officer and has done a fantastic job at trying to reduce the speeding in the school zones, is now handing out very cool little drawings that the kids drew to remind anyone that receives a speeding ticket in a school zone in Oak Bay that to think of the kids, think of their safety. So they receive not only a $483 ticket, but they'll also receive a hand-drawn little drawing by the kids about what safety on their streets means to them. So I think these initiatives are really impressive and groundbreaking in the region for sure, and if not in the province or the country. So I'm so proud of our staff for participating in that effort, and of the kids at the school for participating and being so incredibly enthusiastic. So.
Yeah, I was there, and I can attest to the enthusiasm of those kids, and it was great to see. They also had Greg Damon from Cascadia was there, and talked about design and this kind of stuff. So he brought his knowledge to bear. So yes, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. Thank you. Any other verbal reports? All right. Yes, one more. Councillor Murdoch.
Just quick, just a heads up. So the Heritage Conservation Area Working Group met again last week. We have, thanks to their work, we have now our request for qualifications out. It's been posted, and we're getting responses back. So moves along. You know, it'll take some time. We're going to hopefully clear that off in the next few weeks and get started with that the selected consultant or consultants at that time. So hopefully early in the new year, we'll be starting to work through some of the more technical aspects of the application.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other hands, I'm going to move on to the next topic. There's a bylaw proposal, and there's a memorandum regarding our mayor and council's annual indemnity, annual remuneration. 1997, as we can see by the memorandum, a policy was established by council at that time that we would tie any increases, adjustments to the consumer price index for Victoria as of October 2017, which this year is 1.6. So the recommended bylaw, or the bylaw before us, raises our respective remuneration by 1.6% going forward as of January 1st. So that's the memorandum. Is there a motion for first reading, please?
Move first reading.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Oh, yes, Mr. Jones.
Your Worship, just a reminder, this bylaw could be given 3 readings all at one time.
Yes, I knew that, but given it involved our salaries, I thought we would go by one at a time. So we didn't appear to be rushing it. But I know we've gotten into the practice of first, second, and third reading all at once.
Move second reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Now, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, not opposed. Third reading, please.
Move third reading.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Oh, no discussion. All in favor? Opposed, not opposed. Thank you. Now a motion to adjourn, please.
Move adjournment.
Okay, moved and seconded. Discussion, all in favor, opposed, not opposed. See you in December, everybody, and hope to see you at the light up and the art walk and the great fun in the village. Thanks.